So, welcome back to another RamDragon studio drawing. Give me just a minute to ring off here. And if you're curious what rings are, I got this one that I usually wear over here on my pinky ring. And just made that out of a bolt. That's actually my most recent ring. I make these bentwood rings. This is Texas ebony. That's it's not very pretty right now, but it is my favorite. But prefer drawn without the rings on. Welcome to another October. It's October the 15th. Today's prompt is legend. And I've thought about a few things to go with this. Pardon me, Halloween candy time. Hoping that'll help keep the throat goobers down today. Yesterday I was full of throat goobers. Alright. So, I was looking at it yesterday and I didn't think of anything. I should have spent a little more time thinking about it. Sharpening a pencil right now. Oh, I had a visitor in my stream yesterday. I was excited to see that. I didn't notice them until after the stream was over because my sound alerts aren't working right. Freshly sharpened pencil, as always. Not dangerously sharp. Don't need it dangerously sharp. I'm not going to kill anybody with it this time. Is my camera desaturated? A little bit. Oh well. It doesn't matter, we're doing a black and white ink drawing today of legend. The subject is legend. The drawing won't be legendary, unfortunately, because I'm drawing it. Let's begin. One of the things that comes to mind is the movie Legend. And there's an iconic character played by Tim Curry. And if you don't know either Tim Curry or the movie Legend, then we can't be friends. I mean, come on. Tim Curry's character is I can't remember if he's actually supposed to be Satan or just a fantasy amalgam of different devils. But he's got this weird pointy junk on his chin, And he's got these two enormous horns that come right off the top of his head and straight out the front before curling up. And when I was a kid, I used to always watch that and wonder, because I was a nerdy kid, the first thing I would wonder is, how in the world did they attach those horns to keep them going up like that? To hold them straight out. Of course, as an adult, I know how it's done. But, boy, when I was a kid, that bothered me more than anything. And I wasn't disturbed by the prospect of El Diablo being on the screen. I never took movies very seriously. As a kid, I was always much more interested in the special effects behind the movies than the movies themselves. It's one of the reasons why I've always loved movies like Enemy Mine much better than something more involved. And sure, they have the epic space battle at the beginning of Enemy Mine, but for the most part, all of the effects in the movie were very practical. They had one guy in monster makeup, and other than that, it was very simple. Let's do The Legend of Bob. I'm feeling a little contrary today. So I'll do a legendary office worker who threw, well, if he's an office worker, he's going to have a paunch. He's got to have a paunch. Who through no fault of his own was placed in extraordinary circumstances and, as frequently happens, he was the turd that rose to the top of the bowl. That's totally a saying, right? No extraordinary effort, no gifts or powers. Gave him a paunch. Let's thicken his neck. So let's make Bob a little bit of a dice bag here, and he's going to have a soul patch and a 5 o'clock shadow. Sorry, I had to think a minute which side goes over. He's a little on the chunky side. He probably brews his own beer, right? Then he comes into the office and he scoffs at everybody who drinks off-the-shelf beer. I mean, really, who doesn't know how to make their own beer? And this is going to be a weird angle. I don't know if I can think of this one. A little bit. It's going to be mostly behind. There we go. Ooh, new corporate policy just went around the office. They're paying for it, which is good, but man, what business do they have making everybody wear a Fitbit and basing your health coverage on some arbitrary goals made by a manager rather than a fitness instructor? Geez, what is wrong with these people? So we'll give him a Fitbit, and he lets the strap dangle because, you know, he's a dice bag, and probably a product of the 90s as well. There we go. So we've got Bob the Office Legend. What did he do that was so legendary? He wore a polo shirt to work, because that's exactly the kind of dice bag he is. And he doesn't button the top two, because he thinks it's cool. Oh man, what a dice bag this guy is. He thinks it's awesome to show off just a little bit of chest hair. But to make matters worse, he doesn't actually have any chest hair. Oh, he's talking about how manly it is. There we go. He does have thicker arms, but they're not muscles. You know the guy, you know the type, right? There we go. Probably in high school he sported a mullet because he thought they were cool. They got to be kind of cool. I mean, Billy Ray's got one, right? Oh, you know what? He's wearing a polo shirt to work. I really doubt he's the kind of guy who's going to tuck it in. He's just going to let it hang. Hang right off his butt there. And it's just as well, because if he tucked it in, after an hour at work, it's going to be untucked anyway, because you can't tuck anything into that gut. What's wrong with him? I mean, really? Whew. Alright, so we're getting down towards the foundation here. He's going to wear pleated plants. Pleated plants? He's going to wear pleated pants with that kind of weird looking slip pocket. That's impossible to use. Two pleats are casual. Three pleats are formal. It's a rule. Look it up. Oh, let's say this guy's an engineer. He's not going to wear shoes that he has to lace up every day. Yeah. Why put in any of the extra effort? Just make it look like extra effort. There you go. There you go, Bob the Legend. And his pleated pants are they're totally just off the shelf at Walmart, so they don't have any cuffs or anything on them. Why would he get them tailored? Getting them tailored would cost more than the pants are worth. And he's probably got one of those voices that just sounds like everything he says is sarcastic. Well, actually, during that scene in the third Star Wars saga, oh, geez, would you just shut up, Bob? But this version of Bob is our legend. Let's see. He is wearing office shoes. Not really dress shoes, just office attire. So they're a little bit fancier than most, but they're still just slip-ons. That's all they are. He's not going to put too much effort into it. And let's surround him with banker's boxes. And they're so poorly stacked. I mean, is it any wonder that there needed to be some organization done? Oh, and this one's, the lid's not even on it. What's he celebrating? He didn't even finish the job. God, the guy's a tool. You know what? It was probably, all these boxes were probably stacked up by Diane once again. But because the manager gave the job to Bob, Bob got the credit for it. Way to go, Diane. We were all waiting for Bob to fail. I don't know how to make him more legendary. But let's ink. And once again, the .5 Statler is my weapon of choice. Because I cannot find the box where I packed all of the other pens in. And the chrome dome, because he is balding. And a little bit of hair poofing over the edge, because bald guys keep trying to grow their hair out. And Bob is no exception. When I was doing IT, one of my clients, an architectural firm, just introduced their Fitbit requirement for health insurance. They were getting health insurance reduction based on an office-wide Fitbit reporting. And I thought, holy cow, how big brother is that? You gotta spend so much time trying to keep the government out of our homes, try to keep Google out of our business, and then the very companies we work for are crawling right all the way up into our fridge. I mean, so what? I want a little Debbie every now and then. You know, some health insurance policies are based on genetic likelihood for heart disease. I mean, come on, charging somebody more for health insurance because of a family history, because of genetics, that's 1984 junk, man. That's just... I would say it's just criminal, but I know it would be misconstrued. What I think is criminal is the fact that we have allowed that kind of invasion into our junk, all the way up in our business, man. As a people, that's our fault. But Bob here, Bob's gunning for management. He is on the road. He's already taken credit for Deb's work. Mike says he's taking credit for his work, but nobody can prove Mike's claims. And, you know, Mike's a little evasive on it when confronted directly. He's probably just a Me Too. There we go. Hello, Bob. Man, you gotta be polite to him every morning, too. Even though you know, as soon as you start up a dialogue with this guy, and he's gonna do it, he's gonna start it, he's gonna initiate. Hey, Craig, how you doing? Good, Bob. Fantastic. How you doing? Well, the drive into work was a lot longer and then you're in for it. You've got an hour of him telling the story of how it took him an hour to get to work, because he's going to tell that story in real time. And you gone and committed the cardinal sin of engaging Bob. Ugh, man. And you should know better. You've been working here for 10 years longer than Bob has. And the worst part about his lazy shoes that he wears is they look just like the boss's lazy shoes. The only reason Bob got him was to kiss up to the boss in some way, trying to make a connection with the boss, some similarity. Hoping the boss will notice. And of course the boss notices. The boss notices. Because the boss is just like Bob. Ugh. And he's got these pants so freaking overstarched. I mean, really, who starches pants? Pants? He got them from Walmart, and he still irons them every morning. He always butts his fat little nose right in your office door every time you're talking to somebody about something else. Oh, you talked about the new Far Wars? I hated it when they killed off Chalong. Man, Chalong was my favorite character. Dude, no, I haven't seen it yet, but thank you very much for destroying the movie for me. Chalong is everybody's favorite character in Far Wars. But, you know, the author, George R. Tolkien, is really into killing off everybody's favorite character, so we kind of expected it. But, man, thanks a lot for ruining the ending of the movie. Can't even have a conversation with this guy without him messing something up. Ugh. Oh, Julie's having a get-together at the bar after work. I can't wait to get there. Oh, is everybody meeting at the bar after work? Okay, well, hopefully you can make it. You've got some extra work to do today. I need you to file all of these hard copies in the basement. Bob. But don't worry, I'll tell you how it was. Really, Bob? You keep telling us about your Canadian girlfriend, and now you're going to try to horn in on Julie, huh? Bob the legend. Not all legends are good. Oh, the worst thing, the absolute worst thing about Bob. Makes me absolutely sick. Was that he actually did save the office. He is the one who pulled the fire alarm. He smelled the smoke, pulled the fire alarm, and then went around to everybody's office to make sure that they knew it wasn't a drill. And he went and took that extra mile. So you can't really hate him with too much vehemence, because he was a good guy that one time. Jerk can't even let me hate him properly. I totally screwed up this box. Because somebody can't even line up a stupid lid. I bet it was Bob again. It's always Bob. Every time. Yeah, we'll just cover that up with some cross-hatching. I missed a couple fingers up here. Let's get those fingers in. Oh yeah, there we go. And we get a thumbnail. There we go, thumbnail right there at the end of the thumb. There we go. And we're all set. Little eraser action. And I forgot his golden eyes. Dang it. See, with a brush pen, you should never push it, but I always do. It should be led along. That's one of the reasons why this tip has flared out and it doesn't make a really nice thin line anymore. But with a pen this old, I don't really worry about it too much. I mostly use this pen to lay down black anymore. There we go. Oh, and I found out why my sound indicators aren't working. I had a visitor in my stream yesterday. Right towards the end of the stream. It was just a few minutes before I ended the stream. But they came in, and if you're coming back, thank you for joining me yesterday. But yeah, my studio software, it wasn't compatible with it, so I'm looking for a new streaming studio software that will actually work with all of my extensions that I'm trying to get to work. The one I'm using isn't compatible with any of them. So this is another one of the rings that I did just recently that I just finished. And this one I think is also Texas ebony, but it was the other end of the wood chip that I used, so it didn't have any of the inclusion in it. But just to give you a comparison side by side, you know, this is my favorite ring because it has that nice inclusion in there. It's really pretty, but it's not as well shaped and highly polished as the other rings that I've been making. This one doesn't even properly fit me, so it usually gets worn here when I wear it. I don't wear it a lot. Usually it's this one that gets worn. This is much smaller. This is walnut. I made a couple of these walnut rings. I really enjoy making these. But this one's a little bit strange because it gets worn on the knuckle instead of all the way down at the base of the hand. But I can't draw with it there. I can actually draw with this one on. It's not bad. This one doesn't interfere at all. But I typically don't want to make my other rings jealous, so I take him off too. I got accused one time of peacocking when I was wearing my rings. And if you don't know, if you're not familiar with the term, back in the 80s and 90s, and I think up through the early 2000s, there was a dating guru who, his job was he would give these seminars to loser men and teach them how to go get women. And not just go get women, but like take a woman home tonight to sleep with her. The art of the one-night stand. And that guy was an absolute dice bag too. But I got into watching and reading a whole bunch of his stuff when I was in school back in 08 and 09. And the reason was because one of the presenters was coming to it from a cultural anthropology perspective. And it was a very unique perspective. But he talked about how there are certain triggers that are still embedded in the human brain that exist only for initiating reproduction. And he talked about how these triggers that do still exist and they still affect the subconscious mind can be manipulated to make a person seem like not just an ideal mate, but make a woman believe that, like subconsciously, you can subconsciously program these things into a woman's mind to believe that if she weren't to date you, that it would make her less of a woman too. And it's kind of interesting how the reproductive drive still affects modern man. But because I was into reading all that, it just kind of was a bizarre concept to me. I'm familiar with the concept of peacocking. And what it is to find a way to stand out from the crowd. A guy will do or wear something remarkable, usually something that exists only to initiate conversation, make people ask questions. A particularly iconic or bizarre-looking hat, or I'm trying to think of some other examples. A surfeit of rings is definitely one of them. More than one watch. Wearing, just something that doesn't quite fit, to make people go, huh, what's going on with that? And the other method that was discussed in that material was dissing. And I'm going to tell this story, even though if my friend ever found out that I told this story, I'm pretty sure he would hunt me down and murder me in my sleep. Because that's how friends do. But I was reading about this. It was interesting. I never used any of it. I mean, what would be the point? Particularly the concept of dissing, to me, is particularly dismissive. And one of the reasons I didn't like it was because the kind of women that I get attracted to the most are ones with a lot of confidence and a lot of personality. And for a woman to fall for something as basic as the diss makes her less desirable to me. And the way that the diss works is, and the terminology, by the way, was formed before the common concept of the diss, the common modern version. So the way the diss worked was to dismiss a woman in some way. And so what you would do, the example was, in a bar, never approach a 9. Always approach their 7 friend, right? And yes, this is the terminology that the guy used. And what you would do is you would engage the 7 instead of the 9 in conversation. And every time the 9 tried to butt in, you would literally dismiss her from the conversation. And that constant dismissal, the devalue of her presence, would cause her to crave your attention more. And it would cause her to try more to get your attention. And the shame of it is that it actually works really well in a lot of situations. And women particularly should be aware of the method and the game, which are 2 of these dating forms which use these tools. Because if you're aware of it, you can identify it much easier. But how we doing there, Bob? Bob is off camera. Missed his shoes. I got the shoes in. Some nice patent leathers down here. And I am oversimplifying the technique, and the reason I'm oversimplifying the technique is, honestly, nobody should use it. And the reason I've come to that conclusion is because of the embarrassing story I'm about to tell you about my friend. So I was hanging out with one of my buddies, and we were just kind of talking about the method or the game, or I can't even remember which one it was. Could have been a completely different one altogether. But talking about how these methods work, and you know, I'm a huge nerd, and he's a huge nerd, so we were both just kind of talking about the psychological manipulation side of it, and how stupid it is that it works. And this other buddy of mine, who was surprisingly less adept at social situations than even I was, overheard parts of the conversation and started asking questions, and my buddy and I were both much more familiar with it. The buddy the buddy I'm referencing is a magician and has done con work, mostly from an educational point of view, not from a stealing people's personal wealth point of view. He's never been a black hat, but he was familiar with it. Coming from a busker or a con perspective, it was just something that he had come across in his workaday. And so we started answering my other friend's questions. And he would ask more questions, and we'd answer them. And he was particularly interested in the concept of the diss. And we should have had red flags go up. We really should have had red flags go up. And wouldn't you know it, the next day we're standing in line, the 3 of us all together, standing in line waiting to check out at the cafeteria. And friend 3 turns around behind us, because he was in the back of the 3 of us. Turns around behind us, and there's this tall, leggy blonde behind us who was just absolutely smoking. And he started chatting her up by telling her how her hair almost looks fantastic today, and what do you normally do that you didn't do today? And just, you know, like an almost comment, but a backhanded, very, very clumsily backhanded compliment. Just, and by the time he was done, this poor girl was just in absolute tears. And we had to take him aside, out of line. We weren't even done getting our junk yet. We had to take him out of line and took him out back behind the building. And we had to talk to him for like an hour to get him to understand that that is not okay. But to be fair to friend number 3, he was the first of all 3 of us to get married, so, you know, kudos there. My other friend just got married about 2 months ago. I'm not sure what else to do on The Legend of Bob. But if I cut it off now, it's going to be kind of a short broadcast. I could do another legend. There we go. Yeah, close enough. Legend of Bob, the office hero that secretly behind his back nobody likes. Candy break. So yeah, I am scheduled to continue broadcasting until 12 o'clock. And I usually go until 11, or close to 11. So let's do another legend. Excuse me. Throat goober. It's Halloween. I should do a another legend that's Halloweeny. I'm doing these gnomes I've mentioned before. And the way that the gnomes work is they're basically a huge head with a pointy hat and, you know, like that much body. and they get their cap comes down their head far enough that they pretty much get a ginormous nose. Something like this. and just like a shadow for an eye. They don't really get real eyes. But that's it. They get a lip and a beard. And that's how all of my gnomes start. And I did a whole bunch of Halloween gnomes this time. And what I didn't do was I did not do a creature from the Black Lagoon gnome. And I didn't do a Wolfman gnome. Ooh, I should do a Wolfman. Wolfman gnome. So a Wolfman gnome, he's gonna have his head tilted back because he's howling at the moon. I should give him a wolf snout anyway. Oh, and pointy wolfman ears. Yeah, wolf gnome has to get pointy wolfman ears. And he still gets a beard. There we go. I've been giving my Halloween gnomes eyes, but I think one eye is plenty. So yeah, my third friend I was telling you about, he continued to believe, after overhearing a conversation about it between two guys who were talking about how stupid and silly it was, he somehow continued to believe that the DIS was the best option for him. He was a little funny looking and not exactly what you would call supermodel material, or even hand model material. And he knew it. I mean, he was a smart guy. That's one of the reasons he was my friend. I tend to hang around with smart people. But darn if that wasn't the dumbest thing he ever did. We could not convince him to stop. It took months for us to convince him to stop trying to do that. And the worst part was, he actually got dates off of it. So trying to convince him to stop was even that much harder. But these poor girls, I mean, they would... He was absolutely tearing them down, and that's not that's not okay. And he was mostly doing that because the way that method and the game work is by tearing down the target's self-esteem. And again, these are both methods which seek to dehumanize the female equation, which is another reason why I don't condone them. But by reducing the self-esteem of the target, the guy was supposed to increase his own self-esteem, his own confidence in the situation. And if your confidence is so shaky that you have to tear somebody else's self-esteem or self-confidence down in order to feel confident enough to talk to them, you know, honestly, you're better off staying inside anyway. should not be around human beings. Because ultimately what that is it's bullying. It's a form of bullying. And the absolute height of misogyny. There we go. I keep having Beatles songs going through my head, and I don't know if I'm allowed to sing along with them while I'm broadcasting, but mostly it's a moot point because I can't remember enough of the words to make it worth my while anyway. But it's normally my habit to sing badly along with songs that have lyrics I barely remember while I'm drawing anyway. I just don't know how much of that I can get away with, and in today's Sue happy environment. I keep making these lawn ornament gnomes and stick them out in my front yard. Last year, my sister noticed a I actually got the idea while I was talking with her, and we kind of talked through some of the ideas a little bit, but they were for Christmas. So I spent the month of December making, I think I made 6 of them. I didn't make very many. And I put them out in the front lawn. Actually, I think I only made 4 or 5. I didn't make very many. And put them on the front lawn, and my sister would get on the neighborhood Facebook page, and she kept selling them. Which was, perfectly fine for me. She was doing all the legwork and, getting them sold, and I was just kind of collecting the money, which was a perfect arrangement for an artist. But this year, I had a contract at the beginning of the year that was really well paying. I enjoyed the work more than being unemployed. But the contract didn't last very long. The company was doing pretty badly to begin with, and the job that I was actually hired to do never materialized. So they basically used me as an extra laborer. Now these guys, because I paint them, they don't get a whole lot of shading. I usually airbrush shading on them. But there's a second legend. Two legends for the price of one today. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Inktober with RamDragon Studio, and I'll see you tomorrow.